Hey everybody, Dr. Diane, your libido doc here, and in this video we're going to talk about what to do if your sex drive is different than your partner's sex drive. So this may or may not mean you have low libido, right? Low libido we talk about on this channel. In the conventional world, we say low libido is defined by typically having a low sex drive for at least a period of 6 months. But it's not very clear diagnostically what a low sex drive actually is, right? So it's more around like there's not something, what I mean by that is there's not something in the medical literature that says like, oh, a healthy sex drive is exactly 3.7 times a week or something like that, right? So it's very related to your subjective experience of if you have low desire and you feel that your life would be improved by a higher desire. So when we're talking about a sex drive difference between you and your partner, one thing that we are talking about here is we are not saying that you necessarily have, or your partner necessarily has, a low sex drive. They may or may not. What we're saying here is that there's a difference between how much you want sex and how much a partner wants sex. And by sex, I don't mean necessarily intercourse. It could be, but what I'm talking about here is anything that's truly a sexual act, right? So this may mean something like you are interested in sex once a week, or your partner is interested in sex once a week and the other one is interested in it every day. This may mean one of you is once a week, another of you is twice a month. There's lots of different ways this can actually look, but it can actually cause obvious dysfunction if, especially in a monogamous type of relationship, when this person is the person that is going to be able to provide that need. So what do you do? One of the first things you do, I recommend, is not to hold this inside, right? So if, just like any interrelational problems, if there's two people that value something differently, but one person really values getting up early and another person really values sleeping in late, we're going to have a problem where persons maybe say setting an alarm clock, get up early, and that might just be disrupting the person that's sleeping in late. So we have a value difference that needs to be chatted about to find some sort of way that this can work between the two of you. So sexuality is no different, right? If we have a value difference, a desire difference, a need difference, then it really is an important thing to realize that, first of all, nobody's right or wrong here. Nobody's good or bad. We need to take any sort of polarizing words off the table and really just begin to look at this as a difference in desire and talk about it from a standpoint of, hey, this is normal that two humans come together and they don't have exactly all the same needs. So it's normal that these two humans would need to talk about that, right? Everything, again, normal. So with that, how do you begin? Well, you'll see in some of my other videos that I talk about the importance of having these kind of conversations outside of the bedroom, outside of anything that's stressful. So oftentimes with sex, we can have our ego can be impacted, right? So a lot of people take a lot of pride in being able to show up sexually for their partners. We want to be very careful about damaging this, as that could create a lasting and longer term impact. So as a conversation to have, just really like any type of conversation that is more sensitive with a partner, when hopefully there's not a lot of other stress. We can oftentimes give partners warning around like, hey, I want to bring something up that's important for me to chat about. Is this a good time for you? We can actually kind of pre-frame these conversations and ask permission, and that can typically help these things go a lot better. We always want to make sure we're coming at these kind of conversations with thinking about, again, people not doing things wrong, just laying out the facts with a lot of kindness. You know, one of my teachers always says something like, hey, if you're going to talk to somebody, is it truthful, is it necessary, and is it kind? So we want to make sure that when we are speaking, we're speaking in ways that really pertain to all three of those types of, say, adjectives. So when we're having these conversations, one of the ways to start this is like, hey, it seems like we have a difference in desire right now, in sexual desire. And even personally saying, like, I'm not saying that either one of us is right or wrong, right? If you're the person that wants it more, it's like it could easily be that your partner might think you want it too much, right? And you may think that she or he wants it too little. So we need to be thinking about these scenarios, right, where we are really approaching the other person as like not doing anything wrong. So we might say, for example, like, hey, I just noticed that our sex drive is different and I would really love to talk about it. I really appreciate you and value your needs and value everything. And I don't feel like either one of us is right or wrong, just that it's just different. And and then ask the other person, like, if they're satisfied with the frequency, right? So always asking questions, because it's always possible that the other person is not satisfied. Or sometimes I've even seen situations in relationships and people I work with where one person is actually is initiating a lot and having a lot of sex, not because they want it, or they want it that frequently, but because they feel like their partner does and they're trying to show up for them that way. So we can sometimes even have situations where one person's like actually trying to give more and more and more, and the other person is like, well, I don't even want it that much, right? So we need to get on the same page with this. So by asking questions to actually learn, hey, what is the frequency? And then if you do find that after you ask a lot of questions, ask permission, and you really lay everything out on the table, if you still do find there's a discrepancy, then this is where there can be a lot of creativity on what this looks like, right? And so the creativity might be something like, okay, well, if one person doesn't want to have sex as much, maybe they can be available for, if it's a woman giving a hand job, if it's a man, a woman giving the man a hand job, if it's a man that's like wants to offer more pleasure to the woman, that the woman wants it more than the man, then maybe he can also do some other types of touch and play, fingering, these kind of things. So there's other ways of, sometimes when we bring in these other types of sexual acts, if one person is not as into it as frequently as the other person and their desire is less, sometimes just by showing up for a partner for a pleasure session, sometimes there's an ability to show up that way. And I say it this way because I really think it's important that, hey, if say somebody is not in the mood, right, it's important not to like push them into actually participating in the act, say by intercourse in particular, right? Like if a woman is really not in the mood, for example, it can take a long time for her to get lubricated, and even with lube, she can get drier faster, and it can turn out to just be not a pleasurable experience. And I think it's important to stay away from that. We want to make sure that we're really associating sex with pleasure and closeness and all of these good hormones, because the part of the desire, right, is to bring you guys closer together. So when we talk about these sorts of things, if we can really say things in a way by finding these creative ways around like, okay, well, what ways could I show up to you this differently? I talk on this channel a lot about masturbation, and I think it's a very important topic because there's so much more research beyond even just pleasure. There's also so much more research linking masturbation to health, and to health of the genitals, to health of the cardiovascular system, to health of the brain, and more. So we really want to consider masturbation and self-pleasure. But sometimes that can be something too, if somebody is not in the mood as often and you want to, and you still want to be together. Maybe there's a masturbation session where one person is naked and you're touching, you're being together, and the other person's just masturbating, right? There's lots of creative ways where if one person has a much stronger desire than the other, maybe the other person can still show up in some creative way and provide that closeness and the value, and maybe is not fully engaged in whatever the intimate act is. So they're honoring the truth of their own body, but also being able to provide some help and support and closeness. So I'm giving you some of these examples. These might resonate, they might not resonate. That's not the point. The point is I'm giving you examples to help you start to think more creatively. And that's what I would encourage you and your partner to do is how can you, if you have these different sort of values, how can you still show up for each other in ways where somebody that is, say, has a higher drive can help to get that need met, even though it's not completely met more than they are now, and while still respecting the needs and the values of the person with the lower drive, right? So we can be creative. We can find ways of being supportive. And I hope this conversation also, like one of the other things I like about these sex conversations with partners is I feel like it's really good practice for just asking for making requests for things that would provide more value for us in life in general. And it's just good practice, right? The more we can have challenging and difficult conversations with a partner and get through them well and come out even closer, the more it will just bleed into other areas of our lives. And frankly, the more it turns around and typically leads into a better sex life, because that's typically what happens when people feel heard, safe, and like they can communicate well with their partner. So that's it for this video. Thanks so much for listening. Please do subscribe if this has been helpful. Please don't keep me a secret. Share me with your friends and family. I will see you in the next video.